long will you play Captain Marvel for?
I don't know. Does anyone want me to do it again?
No!
Renegade Online.
Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video, not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. Join us every Sunday afternoon at 6 p.m. Eastern right here on Valiant Renegade for the live show. According to John Trent and Bounding Into Comics reporting, they're saying that Brie Larson reportedly grew disillusioned with Captain Marvel and may be done with Captain Marvel. That's fine, because most of America, and frankly, it seems most of the world, is done with Marvel Studios. The grosses in Phase 4 have continued to decline with rare exceptions in there. Of course, there's Spider-Man that comes from Sony, but that is Spider-Man. That is a very, very special character. Although I don't think Spider-Man is 100% immune to the negative effects of these new bad phases of Marvel. And they really are bad. And it looks like Phase 5 is going to end with a whimper with The Marvels due out in a few weeks. And box office projections have been updated today for that opening weekend. So let's dive in. Last week, we had the first figures from Box Office Pro, which showed 50 to 75 million. On the opening weekend for The Marvels on November 10th with a $121 to $189 million total domestic projected haul. Now, of course, that doesn't include international figures, but given a little bit of track record here with Marvel, if we look at something like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which may be the closest and most recent thing that we can compare this to, which is in and of itself a disaster. If you don't like that, we can always use the Eternals, which is just as bad. These are the movies that the Marvels may actually underperform to become the worst performing Marvel picture of, well, maybe ever. And updated this afternoon, one full week later, not much has changed. Now, what's important to understand about that, even though it's steady, at least in the rounding, they're still projecting a 2% drop from last week's figures and then moving forward. And I don't know if this is going to get any better the closer we get. The problem here with holding steady is that this is already the lowest tracking Marvel title in, I don't know, maybe ever. Tracking for this is so low, it really had nowhere to go but up as we got closer, but that's not happening. I've seen a relatively substantial increase in marketing for this movie in the past week since ticket pre-sales hit. Disney is putting a lot of television commercials on major sporting events tied to ESPN and ABC. If you're watching football or, whether it's college or NFL, you're probably seeing commercials for the Marvels. Now, of course, it's not exactly the target audience, so I don't know what kind of benefit Disney is getting out of throwing these things on ESPN, but they figure, why not? Then again, I'm not sure who the core demographic audience is for this film. They talk about the female-driven films. Well, The Marvels simply is not one of them. It never really was. If you want to know what a female-driven film looks like, I'll give you two. One that came out this summer, of course, was Barbie. There was no question that female audiences were driving a massive ticket sale, about $1.4 billion globally. Then there was Aquaman, which was a B-tier DC film, like most of the rest of the Zack Snyder universe at DC. It wasn't that great of a film, but it did over $1 billion. Why? Female-driven audiences wanted to see Jason Momoa half naked. Just having a superhero movie that has a female lead at the helm doesn't necessarily make it a female audience when the bad performance of the box office is simply a result of the guys not showing up, like, at all. And really, most of the girls aren't going to show up for this either. I've got two teenage daughters, 18 and 16 years old. They don't give a flying flip about Captain Marvel. None of their friends do either. And they don't even know anything about Ms. Marvel that was on Disney+. I don't know who this $300 million production budgeted movie is for, but it's not them. And it's probably a good thing that Brie Larson is looking to walk away from playing this role in any future MCU endeavors because, honestly, it's probably going to kill her career even more than her mouth does. Captain Marvel is a really thin character. There's no depth, there's no interest, and it's not a character that most people knew. And this sequel to 2019's Captain Marvel was never expected to do anywhere near what the first one did if you had any common sense. Now, maybe Kevin Feige managed to convince the bean counters at Disney differently when he was allocating budgets and resources to the making of this sequel, but the rest of us out there knew, and I've said it many times, the only reason the first Captain Marvel movie did $1 billion is because anything would have done great in that slot 2 months before Endgame, when Disney and Marvel Studios were screaming in your face that you had to go see this film before the biggest movie of all time was to drop in theaters. They could have had 2 hours of grass growing, and it would have made $1 billion. Well, that's pretty much what they did with Captain Marvel. So, recently, author Joanna Robinson wrote a book, MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios, and she talked in the book about the future of those Marvel icons was unclear, talking about after Endgame, the departure of franchise actors like Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, and Scarlett Johansson had already taken its toll, as had the shocking loss of Chadwick Boseman, but other MCU stalwarts were heading for the exits. Guardians of the Galaxy's cast went on a farewell tour. Brie Larson grew disillusioned, and Marvel tussled with Sony in a custody battle over Tom Holland and Spider-Man. Robinson stated in an interview, "I don't know if Brie Larson was the wrong person for the role necessarily, but the toxic backlash means that Brie doesn't want to play Carol Danvers anymore. I don't think it was so much an issue of bad casting of Brie Larson. I think it's more of an issue of they shouldn't have used the character in the first place. That was Kevin Feige's shoehorn in at the last minute." Remember, this was all the Kevin Feige stuff after he got rid of Ike Perlmutter from Marvel. All of those shoehorn characters like Captain Marvel and then everything in phases 4 and 5 is what we get from Kevin Feige when he is left completely in charge by himself. Robinson then added, that's sort of what Brie Larson said. She was interviewed at D23 and they're like, so you know we're going to see a bunch more from Carol Danvers. And she's like, I don't know. Does anyone want to see me play Carol Danvers? It doesn't seem like it.
I don't know. Does anyone want me to do it again?
Don't be so modest.
I don't know. I really don't know.
But let's be abundantly clear. Look up Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and The Eternal, 2 of the worst of the Phase 4 and 5 Marvel films. And frankly, the ones that were better weren't all that much better. Marvel Studios and Disney still have yet to see the $1 billion mark in Phases 4 and 5. Again, Spider-Man doesn't count. That is a Sony film that Sony distributes. They get the lion's share of that money. What Disney gets to sit on is everything else, and everything else has been pretty mediocre. And that's especially when you consider that all of these Phases 4 and 5 films keep showing up with $250 to $300 million or more production costs. The Marvels may not even beat Eternals. That's how scary this is. That's one of the worst opening weekends for a modern Marvel film. It's kind of hard to go back and compare the raw data, say, from like a 2013 or 2014 movie. Ticket prices have radically increased since then. We're talking about 50, 60% in many cases. So what we're looking at is just the last couple of years. So The Marvels is looking to become, frankly, the worst performing Marvel Studios film in forever. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.